On January 9th, one of the most violent episodes during the demonstrations against the government of Dina Boluarte took place in the Peruvian department of Puno. 18 civilians and one police officer died, and more than 100 people were injured due to the police repressions. Relatives of the victims and survivors of that massacre are still seeking justice and repatriation. So from Juliaca, our collaborator Alejandra Elias with the report.
The ninth day of every month in Juliaca will never be the same, given the fateful events occurred on that date this past January and February, when hundreds of people were injured and 18 people died, demanding justice and asking for the resignation of President Dina Boluarte. All civilian deaths registered in Juliaca were caused by firearm bullets used by law enforcement. One of the victims of the repression was 15-year-old Brian Apasa, a third-year high school student exiting an internet booth and waiting to meet with his mother. Although he was not taking part in the protests, he was hit by a bullet.
Freddy, our older brother, saw live on his cell phone what was happening, that two young men had been shot in Moquegua, Ramon Castilla. He recognized my brother. He called and told me crying, "I think they have shot Brian."
Brian was hit with a bullet in the head. He was in coma for 3 days and died. He wanted to be a policeman when he grew up like his brother. However, after his murder, his brother resigned from his position upon learning that the so-called law enforcement had taken his brother's life.
Our older brother does not want to leave the barracks. He doesn't want to be a policeman anymore because it was the police who killed our brother, who shot him on the head.
A similar story is that of the Aroquipa Hancock family who went to buy food near the airport on January 9th, when Yamileth, a psychology student at the University of Aquino in Bolivia and a volunteer with the Entre Patas NGO, was hit by a bullet. Although her parents took her to a clinic and then to a hospital, Yamileth died. She was 17 years old.
There should be protests, because it is forbidden to use weapons. People will never use those weapons. They are defenseless. The policemen shoot with their guns. It's not fair.
On February 9th, Hernan Silva, 32, was returning home from a family reunion in Juliaca. To get home, he had to pass through the airport. When he noticed that the police started shooting, he stumbled and fell. The last thing he remembers is hearing a shot and an explosion. Moments later, his hand was severed. After 2 months, he's still recovering from the event.
They didn't just break my hand, which had to be amputated from the wrist. I have a crack in my right leg bone, and the eardrum of my right ear got perforated.
Although 2 months have passed since the first massacre in Juliaca, it is still unknown who is directly responsible for the tragedy, and there have been delays in the investigation.
It shouldn't be that those who have murdered our fellow citizens have not even been summoned or remanded to pretrial custody. It's been 2 months already. We demand justice once and for all.
During Dina Boluarte's government, more than 60 people were killed at demonstrations. Still, protests are increasing and repression is intensifying throughout the country.
Firma desde Perú, Alejandra Elias para teleSUR.